TV World. You're certainly watching World this morning alongside a very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Hajar Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. But first things first, hello Haja, how are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Azad, for introducing me. Jazakallah khair. I'm doing fine, alhamdulillah. How are you doing today?
I think so far so good, but for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, by far, in winters, this was the coldest morning ever recorded as of the statistics and records previously held by Islamabad on this date and day as well. And I could feel it.
Really?
Even though that I asked my mother to give me a desi rizai, which is filled with cotton, which people over here usually get on their weddings. But ladies and gentlemen, honestly, even in that, I had to wear a hoodie. And I was like, okay, you know what? I certainly need to kind of think of having an inverter air conditioner in my room, only if I can afford that. But having said that, since it's 22nd of December, 2022, there's just one simple question I would want to ask you, and people have already started to think about it. What are your New Year resolutions?
Okay, so a lot of people do deliberations on their New Year resolutions and whatnot. So I don't have any particular New Year resolutions, but I do have a goal in my life, which is to get myself engulfed into the research and produce something so that people would remember me that this person has produced this book or this research, something like that.
Wow, so you want to be that towering figure in research.
I mean, I want to prove my mark in the intellectual studies or in the scholarship. Yes.
And you certainly have that grit too as well, and inshallah, all the very best for that, and it's going to be a longer journey.
Can I ask you vice versa? I mean, what are your New Year resolutions or goals or whatever?
Okay, my New Year resolution is to be more closer to family because, past 2 years post-COVID, I think I have spent quite a lot of time running with work, not having my weekends off as well. So my goal this time around is to spend more time with my children.
And what is your ideal conception of spending your time with your family?
Okay, my ideal concept is, for example, just yesterday I took them horseback riding. Then I would take them somewhere where they could learn something new. So I'm not of the sort where,
for example,
just go onto the slide and something. For example, we have this Dino Valley, so they can go. And now, alhamdulillah, I mean, imagine that my daughter, who's only 3 years old, knows all the dinosaurs' names as well.
Do you know that?
Yeah. So imagine, I had to learn because then how can I cross-check? So these are the things. And ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that every single time you're with your kids, because mothers, obviously, they're around them 24/7, 365 days a year. And they have their own personality. But from a father's perspective, what I've always wanted to do was that wherever we go, they might take away something. For example, I have this habit of not having an argument with my children, but I'm always there to kind of reason with them. So imagine that, my youngest ever child, who happens to be 2 years old as of now, what she does is that she's habitual of throwing things away. And every time I ask her, Bita, why would you do that? And she's like, I don't know. And so I'm trying to figure it out, whether why is she doing it, but she certainly does not have any idea about it. But this is something which I wanted to educate, if people are out there, not even educate, I think I would want to impart this information on my behalf, that please make sure that never scold your child. I mean, I have really not been a parent who would rather be willing to scold their child. I would rather want to have a word with them, sit down, talk to them. And now my daughter, who's actually three and a half, she would always reason with me now. For example, if I'm going to the gym, she would always ask me, Daddy, where are you going? I'm going to the gym. Why are you going to the gym? To get stronger. And then she goes, you can have kiwis, you can have bananas, and you can have apples to be stronger.
Wonderful.
Why go to the gym? And then I was like, okay, beta, I think this is for my aesthetics, my muscle look good. So it's a beautiful conversation. And once you start to have these conversations, that's not what the core is. The core is that when they will grow up, they will always come to you, they will always resonate with your values, and they would always sit down and have a word with you.
Okay, Shahzad, so alhamdulillah, you are a father to 3 beautiful girls, and I really wanted to ask this question. So how do you define that line between, teaching them and then making sure that you have a certain authority over your kids so that they do not overstep that mark, right? And obviously, I think the way the things are going, we are in the 21st century. I do feel that these kids, you can't scold them like we used to get scolded back in our days. Why? Because they're more aware and there's so much influx of information because of the social media and technology technology, and they are being raised up differently than us, right?
Exactly.
But there needs to be a specific, very defined line, where you need to reinforce your authority upon them.
Okay.
Where does that line come
So
from?
there are two things, and it's a very important question for parents like me who are out there who are still trying to figure it out, and even I'm trying to figure it out as well, and there's no one solution which is going to fit all.
Obviously.
So what I've seen is that, my daughter, alhamdulillah, who's 9 years old now, she started to reason when we were leaving from our house towards the horseback riding. She said, why can't I sit in the front? And I was like, the baby's a lot younger. I'm not sure whether she's going to be stupid enough to open the doors at the back, and I'll be worried. She's like, no, every time she sits in the front. So it was an argument. But the thing is that I don't believe that parents should always have the authority to tell the children not to step beyond that line. I think they learn from example. And, for that example which I set in my house, the way I treat my parents is the example for my daughters. And I've never seen, alhamdulillah, that they would go beyond that as well. And then with daughters, I think it's with the mother more.
True,
so for me, I mean, that's always a conversation with me and my wife that, hey, you know what, you're always the nicer guy. And I'm like, you know what, because I don't scold them, I don't beat them as well. Unfortunately or fortunately, but that's not something which they will get from me. I think all they need to get from me is love, care, and protection.
Wonderful. Alhamdulillah. And I think everyone has a different standard, have a different parenting style. And as you mentioned, there is no one fit style. Because why I asked this question is because I was watching a Netflix, and obviously Netflix, there's a lot of Western hegemony on that. And I generally feel that the parents there is a crisis of authority, especially in the parental terms. And when they're exercising their parental skills, obviously on their children. So there was this scene where a young boy, he's very much influenced by his brother, but then that brother gets some sort of scolding in the school, or he gets bullied by his peers, and then he doesn't open up to his mother, and mother doesn't probe enough into the school routine, and enough for him to be open up and to speak. And I just felt that there's just a crisis of authority out there, because the mother could have pushed more to asking, well, why are you so much traumatized? What happened in the school? And that the kid was also not opening up, and he said that this is my space and you need to respect them. And I do feel that this is some sort of wrong parenting, or there's something wrong with that, because there are safe spaces for your kids, obviously, but obviously then their parents' roles come in, and they need to step in to probe in what is wrong with their kids.
Exactly. And having said that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a good look at the top stories, what's happening inside the country and outside the country and in the field of sports. Let's go. Okay,
wonderful. So Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has launched a resilient recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction framework for Pakistan floods 2022. Prime Planning Minister Ahsan Iqbal called on Prime Minister and presented him a copy of 4RF report. He apprised the Prime Minister that the document is the action plan for the rehabilitation and reconstruction of the damages caused by the recent climate-induced floods, and was briefed that the document is based on the loss and damage estimated in the post-disaster needs assessment report, which was launched late October this year. And obviously, Shahzad, that we have seen that there's a lot of flood in Pakistan and the climate-induced calamity that has struck up country, and government is further burdened by $40 billion of the additional support that they need to provide to the vulnerable population out there. Obviously, because their homes are destroyed, their livelihoods are destroyed, their livestock has been damaged, their crops have been damaged, destroyed, and they're more vulnerable out there. And I was listening to some reports on the TV out there that there's still some flood, especially in the Sindh area. There's still water there, and it is breeding ground for a lot of waterborne diseases out there.
Exactly. So, and obviously, I think it's the remuneration we're looking at. Ladies and gentlemen, that calamity which has struck Pakistan, we still hope and pray that nobody has to go through it as well. We've had support from all of our partner countries as well, friendly countries we've had democratic relations with as well. And that's great. And alhamdulillah, it's good to see that our government is on top of it as well, and where they're making sure that they're going to go out there and help people. Now moving on, where the army chief met injured officers and soldiers who got injured during Bannu CTD complex operation. General Sayyid Asim Munir remained with them for some time and inquired about their well-being. The army chief appreciated high spirit and morale of officers and soldiers and lauded their professionalism during operation against terrorists.
And obviously, I think the kind of situation that has developed in our country, it's very much important that our top leadership goes out there.
Exactly.
So moving on to the Christmas festivities, because it's December and the Christian community across Pakistan, like other parts of the world, has started preparations to celebrate the grand festival of upcoming Christmas festivity on Sunday. The community has brought essential items like dresses, shoes, other accessories, and also decorated the Christmas trees and brought the gifts for their loved ones. The festival will be celebrated with different activities such as decorating Christmas trees, cake cuttings, illuminating houses, and observing prayers in their churches. Yeah. And also in the PTV, we have this little tradition of celebrating the Christmas. And today when I stepped into the door and I saw a Christmas tree there and the presents there, and also we are also celebrating Christmas here in our office too.
Exactly, we are, and I think that the first person to celebrate it today was our producer Hasnain Hamid, who actually got to office very early and posted pictures on his social media. But now coming down to where we were talking about climate change and the 4RF report as well, and certainly, ladies and gentlemen, we really need to think about it. As a nation, we really need to kind of curb this menace, and that too all together, not just the government alone. So to talk about this phenomena of smog, what it is, basically, we are lucky that we've actually been joined by an apt guest, a person who can answer all our questions, ladies and gentlemen. But before we do that, we really need to be very well aware of the AQI, which is the Air Quality Index. And when we speak about Air Quality Index, only 0 to 50, ladies and gentlemen, is that breathable air. And unfortunately, that's not really the case over here in Pakistan in most of the cities. And to further talk about this, ladies and gentlemen, we're lucky that we've been joined by an environmentalist over here inside the studios, who happens to be Dr. Usman Mustafa. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Wa alaikum salam and good morning.
Thank you, sir. Aapka mausam kaisa hai?
I'm fine.
I'm fine. Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Wonderful to have you over here. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we have been witnessing this phenomena of smog. It's making our traveling quite hazardous as well. The air we're breathing in, it's causing a lot of problems. What is smog? Why does it exist?
Actually, you see these phenomena, these things are occurring when we have the cold temperature.
Yes.
And it's actually the soil we become cold, cooler and cooler, and due to some evaporation, water evaporation, the evaporation freeze and the freezing of water in the air, and the further it enhanced with the dust and other things, smoke, particularly the smoke. So it's become a problematic. So that's that you can see nowadays. Even every day we have the index, and the lowest, as you already mentioned, the lowest level is 0 to 50, and the highest is 300. And we have recently 373 in Peshawar. Oof. So you see, this is the an index point of view. We are in the third out of 100,
and sir, we have had
118 countries. We were ranking in third numbers.
And sir, we've had 475 and 500 plus in Lahore too as well. But alhamdulillah, it's at 150 something today.
Yep.
But sir, very quickly, because always, I think when we used to talk about fog, there was a little bit of romanticism attached to it. And eventually when we got to know about that this is not fog, this is smog, I think all of that romanticism is killed as well. Yes. I think we're like, okay, we're going in the dust again, unfortunately.
I think it's better to distinguish between fog and
smog.
Smog. Smog is a combination of your air, dust, plus smoke.
Okay.
And of course evaporation of and this temperature, whereas in the fog you have particularly only the water evaporation, and that's freezed. So in the very small crystal of water is a smog. No, is a fog. Fog is also has some problematic, because it's also creating some problem, lung diseases and other.
Really?
But yes,
with
of course.
Fog?
Yeah, because I
never knew that.
No, but when you are even winter, you have more influenza and other problems.
Yeah, only if I do not. That's what.
If you are not covering your face and you are going openly and you are just be very sensitive of that, enjoying that, but it's not a romantic in that sense. But it's creating a lot of problem, and particularly now COVID-19, we should be very careful and very conscious about those things.
So even fog is not good for health.
No, it's not, definitely to some extent it's useful, because it's also for the agriculture point of view, from other point of view, it's creating more moisture, and it's one type of some irrigation facilitate in even
So
watering.
but smog at all
Smog
is
is in all respect, it's very dangerous and problematic. And it's a phenomena particularly due to climate change and due to environment degradation.
And let's talk about the Lahore smog, because it is very notorious, and obviously millions are engulfed in the thick plumes of smoke, and which also darkens the sky, and also obviously our lungs are also besieged because of that. So let's talk about some of the stories, the good stories, inspirational stories. For example, Beijing was one of the very polluted cities, but I think the government made a tremendous efforts in making sure that their skies are not dark and foul. So what can we learn from the example of Beijing?
Yeah, I think the China has the very good strategy of development. If you see in fact, this all the environment problem is created by the Western, and due to their expansion in the industry and unnecessary production and unnecessary consumption. That's really a phenomena. Particularly in 1990, if you see, there is a peak of the industrialization and boost, but that's creating a good thing in one way, that there is a lot of industrialization, there is a lot of products new emerging, and that's mainly due to knowledge based economy. We at that stage, the Google and other things, you can see and you can get anything, and it's very open, so there is a boost, there is a very good but that has a consequences. The consequence is with the Western, particularly the entrepreneur or the industrialist or the capitalist, they are more oriented to the profit. And they can earn profit only there is more consumption. So they created unnecessary consumption in the society in order to boost their production. Demand. So in order to create a demand, they have unnecessary demand side. Let me give you an example. I just give you a very simple example, and I code in my classroom also. Like in early, I have taken my food as some type of chana chop, the grain on the food, even on the pepper leaf on the leaf we are getting some in the particular area. But no, you can see, you are going to KFC and other, you are asking them, they give them one paper and other paper them for foil and other things. I recently went to UAE and my daughter's house, and they order some food, and even there is a foil and there is a wrapping and 2-3 more layers. So over the time we are consuming unnecessary things, which are, and when we are consuming all those unnecessary things, they need to produce the things.
Exactly. And sir, I would want you to go back in time, because I still remember that, earlier in the days when we were kids and we would go to the tandoor wala. So we would take hot pots from our houses, or probably
the kapda, the clothes,
that piece of cloth as well. And if we are to kind of get takeaway from any restaurant, we would take our own culinary alongside us as well, and make sure. And those practices have evaded. And it's probably because of the way people are living now. Most of the people do not live the way we used to live in joint family systems now. They're dependent, and they have so much other work to do. So I think obviously that's a debate that we really need to control that waste. But we have seen that these developed countries, political leaders have not agreed to all of those climate change policies. I mean, for example, I'm going to take you back in time when Trump openly in his speech said that we want industrialization, we want our country to progress, and we certainly cannot afford that. But
and they have not signed even.
Exactly, they didn't even sign the protocol. They didn't even sign the protocols. So imagine, that for all of what they have done, I mean, it's not really fair enough for Pakistan to go through it, because imagine that half of the industry we even had, just because of power resource management, I think half of the industry has moved on to Bangladesh now, because there was lack of resources over here. So why do you think that we had to go through this brunt?
Particularly you are talking about the environment. I remember one of my teacher, Dr. Jamali, Amali, sir, he was with the FAO. He talked about the sustainable development, and he give a very simple example of sustainable development.
What is that?
That is that what your father has given, just give to your son.
True, okay. So you cannot enjoy any bit of it?
No, but at least, you see, if you give
it's just the way they have given it to you.
Exactly, at least.
Your needs are being satisfied.
In fact, we have to improve the things, and we have give to better chance everybody. As you are saying, you are training your daughter and other things. In order to improve, you are giving a better, you should be a good father.
Exactly.
So same thing is, as a nation, as a country, as a people, we must, for the next generation, we must take care of that. But what we are doing is, we are degrading the environment and creating them the worst things.
And thank you so much for addressing the elephant in the room, which is the capitalism, because the unbridled expansion, we have seen, especially in Islamabad, Shahzad, that there's so much mushrooming growth of housing societies that they have slaughtered all the trees there. And Islamabad used to be very green, and we used to take a lot of pride that we have lots of trails here, and it was a very environment-friendly city. But I think the way things are going, in the next 5 years or 10 years, it will be another Lahore. So how do we address the developmental needs and also make sure that our environment is sustainable?
I think the urbanization is a necessary, is a natural process, because the population is increasing, we are not controlling the population. When your population is increasing, we have to care about the food, feed and fiber. Because food need for ourselves, feed also for the animal which we are eating, a fire we are eating. So all those we need more land.
True.
And the in generally the per unit pressure on land is increased. So what is the one of the China, you have given the example last, very importantly, China has a vertical urbanization, and within the verticalization they have also plantation on the vertical plantation also. Even in the house, one of my friend, he is working on that also. This even in your house you can have vertical garden also. You have a vertical vegetation, you can prepare or produce vegetable for your own consumption just vertically. So it's not no, that's an alternative that China has adopted, and they are using not only vertical in building high rising building, but also they have a lot of plantation. So that's one of the solution we have. We must have a more tree.
Exactly.
And there is another 3R which we are talking is particularly that's the recycle, reuse, and one thing more about that is the
3 R's.
Yeah, 3 R's. I forgot.
Recycle.
The recycle, yes, yeah, very rightly. So we have to recycle that also. So and that is the basically even one of the in 90 to 218 I most probably there are 2 guys who got the Nobel Prize particularly on this environment issue. One of them he was giving the reason, and that's it, particularly the high production sites, and the other was saying this is a good because in 1990 there is a flush of the knowledge and there is a boost in the industrialization. That is mainly, I already told, this is a knowledge based economy. But the second guy, the Nobel Prize winner, he told that this is creating unnecessary production and consumption, which I already emphasized. So when we are talking, we must have a judicial reuse, recycle, and we have to minimum the things also the
also this brings us to the very conception of the nature, because we are moving away from the nature based system, Shahzad, and the way the China is developing its economy or the urbanization, because the sir mentioned here is that what they're doing is that they're vertically expanding and they're also planting the trees on the top, right? So this brings us again to that point where we are moving away from the nature, and that is why there's so many problems which are caused. So we need to move towards the nature based ways, and this is one of the talking point of the COP27 and the Sharm el Sheikh COP conference about moving towards the nature based solutions and how they can help us fight against the climate change.
Exactly. And in addition to that, so very quickly towards the end, what do you think, in your opinion, are the solutions to smog, air pollution and climate change?
Yep, first of thing is the awareness. And because you all are from the communication.
Aware about
no,
that.
but awareness is there, but there is no institutional arrangement also.
True.
We
people need to get
people
education.
Are educated, and there should be some from government side compulsions also.
Exactly.
Like why there should be vehicles which are producing this fuel problem they have, there should be some check and balance, not using the 5-year-old or this and this. Similarly, when you are going unnecessary, there's a, I think the government has done very wonderful thing that 20% government officers, they should do the job in their home. So when you, what happened with this is reduce the transportation. Transportation is one of the main. Then you have to must have chimneys and others, and industrial, you must have some rule and regulation, and their implementation is important.
Exactly.
If you are not implementing the things, then rule and regulation have no.
I'm sorry, sir, but I think I need to take a minute over here and kind of reiterate upon what you said, and that is that so imagine that the government has taken a decision of sending their 20% of the employees to go and work from home. Imagine that people who do not come to the office on time and do not work in the offices, do you think they will work at home? I think that's going to be a bigger challenge for us too as well, and we really need to be true to ourselves. We really need to be true to our environment. And just like sir mentioned over here, and the case is that, you know, that the way you got your things from your parents, you really need to transcend them to your kids just the way you've got them, not deteriorate them, in fact make them better. Well, thank you very much, sir, for being with us. It was lovely to be in conversation with you, and for all of those amazing gentlemen who work for the government and have actually will be on leave and will be working from home, please make sure that you make a promise to yourself that you will give your 100%. I think that's something really important, whether home or not. Just make sure that you know that Allah is watching, okay? Please just do that. We're heading out towards a short break. Don't go anywhere. When you come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about life today as well. Right. You know, let's talk about it.
So can we achieve 100% efficiency? I think I read somewhere in the physics it
yes,
can't
we
be
can.
achieved.
We can.
Okay.
I'll tell you how, okay? We're going for a short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Welcome back, and before going on to the break, we were talking about how we need to revert back to the nature-based solutions and back to the natural way of life, because this is how it should be. And when we are far away from that, we see that there's so many problems propping up, right? Yeah. So today we're going to having discussion about how to lead a meaningful life and how do you derive purpose and meaning from your life. And I think there are very few people in their lives who actually go on this path of having a pursuit, a purpose in their life, and they actually fulfill that.
Exactly. And in addition to that, Hajra, I even have an example, you know, from somewhere within the very rural Punjab.
Okay.
There's this tradition when an elderly who've actually led a very successful life passes away.
Okay.
They do not cry on that. They actually play dhols that he's actually lived a very meaningful life. And
then they celebrate him.
Yeah,
right?
and that's something certainly everybody is looking forward to. You know, as Muslims, we're looking to a very meaningful life over here.
True.
And the life hereafter as well.
True.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's what scares us most of the time as well.
Right.
That whatever we're doing in this life, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get in life according to that as well. So to talk about that, obviously we can give our opinions, but we're short on time, so we want the expert over here to speak about it. Ladies and gentlemen, he happens to be a motivational speaker all over the internet, social media, beyond boundaries. A lot of people follow him, alhamdulillah. He always makes sense with his words. And these are his opinions, all right? Yeah, I think that's something which everybody needs to know in the first place. And without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we have been joined by one of the most amazing motivational speakers and one of the most amazing and viral motivational speaker, ladies and gentlemen. He is Mr. Umair Jalliawala. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. I hope people really make me viral after listening to all of
Inshallah,
this.
inshallah. I mean, you've always been viral.
You know, viral has become very, it has broken a whole
It's a very generic term, but obviously in terms of motivation speaking, let's do that, okay? Let's be very precise. What is meaningful life? Let's get started.
I believe we are here to make meaning. We don't have to create it. We just have to discover it.
Okay.
And many times we are, you know, trying to find that one big meaning. And sure, it's good to have that, you know, that direction, that vision. Yeah. But life is full of meaning. I've met so many people on the way. I have waited, and each interaction, if I look into it, I have the opportunity to contribute, and I've seen people contributing to me. So I'd like to define meaning that way. I think every moment, if we look back into our lives, nothing will seem like a coincidence. Yeah. Nothing will seem like an accident.
That's true.
And there would be so many people who just popped up for various meanings that they offered. So I think meaningful life is discovering that every moment. It's believing that He has not sent us down as an accident.
True.
And what we can do with this thumbprint, with this tongue print, and with the work that we do is for us to do. Nobody else is going to do it, right? And if we miss that moment, we've missed the meaning.
Exactly. And in addition to that, thank you very much for saying that, because I've always been an avid believer of that, you know, that life is not a destination, it's a journey. So everything you're doing, what you're referring to is that you really need to take out some good meaning out of it. You know, maybe our conversation today, maybe me going on the road, maybe me doing anything. You know, it needs to be meaningful. So every action really needs to reflect a meaning out of it. How many times do you think, I'm very sorry, Haja, that we are focused on that the meaning which is going to be taken out of whatever our action is will be a positive one?
Yeah, I think we're afraid. We're afraid. We live in the past or the future, and that's why we keep missing the present. And we undermine ourselves. We undermine the very fact that our presence can lighten up a room, our dialogue can change a heart, our action can stay, you know, even after we are gone. But it's, you know, overcoming that resistance. I think that's the fear that stops us, and I think it's a leap of faith. To really, really put in faith that, hey, there is some meaning there. Sometimes we don't quite find it, but we discover it after that is done. You know, you people would say, you know, I didn't quite hack it then, but later in my life, I learned that that's why it was happening. So I would encourage that leap of faith, overcoming that fear. By the way, our spirit has two needs. That's what I've learned, and I learned this very early on. Now I can connect the dots, that it wants to grow and it wants to contribute. And if you're being these two, you will be a meaningful person. About the journey that you said, what is the destination? I think the entity up there wants us to be liberated, like we were when we were born. And then we got into a lot of ego traps, we got into a lot of qualifications, and we become so limited in our own minds and in our actions that he wants us out. And therefore, every moment of life, you're not just being watched by your parents, you're being watched by him. And he wants you to rise above what? That's